Next, we'll have standard and assessment. Chair Cannon, are you prepared? Okay, I'll turn your mic on. Time's yours.
All right, so Standards and Assessment Committee, the first thing we had was an information item. It was about the Upstart preschool program. We just got a report on it from Sarah Young. The report was that Upstart is doing very well. And one of the most exciting things they told us was that they have been doing some longitudinal studies on the children that have gotten Upstart, and some of the gains that they've made have been carrying over up into first grade. So that was a great report to get. No action on that item. The next is an action item, the process for revising standards. This was a simple item. We added a revision to include that in our standards process, the Access Committee would be included as looking at all of those standards before they come to us, so they can be vetted for the way they affect diverse students and so forth. So that was approved by the Standards and Assessment Committee, and we move that the board approve the updated process for revising standards.
Okay, the motion before the board is that we approve the updated process for revising standards. Discussion to the motion, Vice Chair Ellis.
I apologize for being absent during, it sounds like I missed a lot. It just happened to be that June was a really bad month to be here, but I have no problem with them reviewing it, but if we're going to start giving special provisions to one committee, I can think of a million others that should have a seat at the table specifically called out like that. And so I'm just concerned that, I'm concerned with it because I can name a million others that should be a top priority for giving input as well.
Just to note that Access Committee is an advisory committee that we've committed, that we as a board constituted and have asked them to give us their advice.
I understand, and they could do that without being specifically mentioned in the...
Board Member Hanson.
I think, excuse me, I think this is a great addition, because often we forget to give them stuff, and they are so fantastic and give us such great advice, and that's why they're there. So I think this is great. I appreciate Standards and Assessment for adding that.
Vice Chair Ellis.
Sorry, thank you. I agree, they give, but when someone's called out specifically, it's like we put sometimes their comments hold more weight than another entity's. And so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, let's add a parent group on here, because as a parent, I feel like I had little to no input, even though there's a 90-day public comment period. I don't feel like those comments were taken as seriously as when I see people come in and basically have a seat at the table, and we're basically giving this group a seat at the table in lieu of other groups. So that's my concern.
Right. Board Member Reeby.
I'm going to agree with Board Member Hanson. We created this group. We asked for these people to serve on this committee. We vetted them so that they'd be people that we could trust to look at something that they might have a better understanding for. As we create these committees, just like some of the other committees we create, we are asking for their expertise. And parents can be a part of that committee, and they will have more weight when they are part of that committee. So I think that was a great use of our committees.
Okay. Board Member Belknap.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this, but I'm just wondering if there's a more equitability in this if we put something like board advisory committees. Because at this time we have access, but we may in the future have another committee that we have created that are ours, and not be specific just to access, but to any board created advisory committee. So I would make that amendment.
Okay, your
I'm not sure what the
your
words are.
proposed amendment is to change what in,
Well, Miss Lorraine, help me. Public review, including board advisory committees.
So, yeah, so it would be number 9 in the standards revision process. So it would probably say public review, including review by advisory committees of the board with monthly brief updates to the board.
okay, so did you, were you able to get that amendment to the motion? Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion to the motion, Vice Chair Brittany Cummins?
I say as long as that is understood as any applicable board advisory committees, because there are some that may not want to give input on standards, but just, I move that we add the word applicable
Okay, that's an amendment.
to the amendment.
Public review, including review by any applicable advisory committees to the board.
Can I just streamline this a little bit? Are you okay with that in your original motion? Okay, we're not gonna deal with all these amendments. So who seconded your, are you okay with that? Okay, so we have an amendment. Not seeing any discussion, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. So let's go back to the motion before the board, and if I can get the chair, Cannon, to repeat that, or should I go to Lorraine? She's got it?
Did you get it, Lorraine? I just skipped to the next one, so I'd be prepared
Oh,
for.
okay. Well,
I mean, I've got it on 2 different screens, so that's why it's hard. Okay. Okay, the motion would be that the board approve the updated process for revising standards with the amendment that on number 9 include review by applicable advisory committees of the board. Is that correct?
okay. I've got a lot of heads. So that's a motion that's before the board. All in favor? Not seeing any discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. So we have all ayes, one no, correct? Okay. Okay. Chair Cannon.
All right. The next item we have on our agenda is actually in 2 parts. One is a rule, and the other is a new policy that is a policy for educators to use when doing state testing. So this policy document needed to be reviewed and updated. You will, if you'll notice that 11.4B is the final one that we're bringing to you today and asking you to approve that one. So the Standards and Assessment Committee moves that the board approve the updated and amended Standard Testing Administration and Ethics Policy on second and final reading.
Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve the updated amended 2018-19 Standard Test Administration and Testing Ethics Policy on second and final reading. Discussion? Seeing.
11.4.B.
I'm not on the same page again. Okay, isn't the motion that the board approved, we're right here, correct? Do you have what I have? This is,
It's right here. We don't do second and final for anything but this.
okay. Okay, the motion, to correctly state the motion from the committee, is that the board approve the updated and amended 2018-19 Standard Test Administration and Testing Ethics Policy, period, correct? Okay, thank you. Discussion to the motion, Board Member Bolter.
I just would like, is part of this update, because I see that it says that there was a request made that we collect data and online LEA testing rates and opt-out rates and causes. Is that part of the updated manual to have that in there? Or is that not part of it? I just want to I don't want it in there. I just want to make sure it's not.
So Superintendent, who would speak?
That's
who
not
would-
part of the manual, is it?
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll invite
Okay.
Darren up.
That was just a separate request. Okay.
I have a question.
I just want, it was more of a clarifying question. Did you?
Let me restate it. You're wondering if the testing ethics policy requires that
If part of
opt-out
that-
information be collected?
Right, and look at the rates and reasons and out and such.
No, no.
Okay.
This policy is directed towards our educators to gives them instructions on what to do before testing, during testing, and then after testing. During testing, the section during testing does identify parental rights to opting out. You'll see that listed there under the subsection during testing, UTLEAs. It's right under the third bullet. There's some reference to that, but it doesn't have any requirements for reporting or adding to the parental opt-out
Okay,
provisions.
thank you.
Vice Chair Ellis?
So I'm looking through this, and explicitly or implicitly that they can't encourage kids to opt out of the test, but is there anything that says that they can't encourage kids that they have to take the test? Or do you feel like that would be covered? Because I feel like there was, with the new provision in board rule, that we had kind of the reverse effect where teachers were then put in an uncomfortable position where they're then trying to tell the kids they need to take the test.
Yeah, and I think, again, under the during testing section, we put those two together, both the bullet that talks about an LEA shall honor the parent's request, and then it cites the code and also board rule that gives the additional provisions. And then the bullet right under that is where we indicate that an LEA shall reasonably accommodate a parent or guardian's request. And that cites the parental rights code and also the board rule where you amended that last March to allow that to happen. So those are the two places within here. It doesn't, this policy doesn't intend or take any action to expand or restrict those rights. It just references the board rules that are associated with it.
And then this,
You have a follow-up?
yes, please. The policy, embedded in here anywhere, does it reference the policy and procedure manual that's more than this 4 pages? So according to state law, you don't have to have a state-approved opt-out form, but we have that in either the test manual or in the rule, where they have to use a specific form, but that's not in this. That's not referenced in here.
Correct. Yeah, and it hasn't been contained in this policy in prior years either.
Board Member Lear?
I just was looking at the first bullet at the top of page 3, and to me that, if I were a teacher reading that, an administrator reading it, it just feels like the wording is odd. A proctor is present and active proctoring takes place throughout the test session. The more I read it, the better it sounds, but. I just want to comma. Yeah, a proctor is present, comma, and active proctoring takes place throughout the, I don't want to nitpick it, but I would just ask you to kind of look at that and see if there's maybe a clearer way that you could say it. And I'd be fine. As long as the substance stays the same, that's fine.
And there's a period at the end.
There you
To me,
go.
it makes sense.
You know how to read it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the comma.
You need the comma because it's a compound.
Anyway.
I
I'd just
agree,
see
a
if
comma
you
would
could-
be good.
You could just see if it could be more easily understood.
We have something right back here that in a compound sentence, you put a comma before if it's fanboys, do you know that little, how to remember it? So that would apply in this case. I think it would improve it.
okay.
Thank you.
Board Member Lisa Cummins?
Michelle, I don't, Board Member Bolter, if you want to go down to licensed Utah educators shall ensure that, and then the second bullet point under that, two. Under the second bullet point, all students who are eligible to test are tested or recorded as to why they didn't participate. So we were just told that they are not asked that question, but it's written in there that they're supposed to be asked.
Yeah, so we have, in the testing system, we have to record codes. We have to account for every test. So if a student's absent or a student refuses to test or there's a parent completes the opt-out form, we have to account for each test in the state standards assessment system, and that's what that's referring to. There isn't an additional process that takes place, and you'll note that that statement was in the prior year's testing ethics policy. That's not proposed as a new
So it has
addition to that.
okay, thank you.
Board member, never mind. Okay, the motion before the board is that the board approve the updated amended 2018-19 standard test administration and testing ethics policy. Is that where we're at, Chair Cannon?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Not seeing any discussion, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Chair Cannon, please
All
continue.
right, the second part of this item was a rule, R277-404. This rule discusses the same issues that we just went through, and we noted, Angie just came to me and noted that we need to make a small amendment to this. The date needs to be updated to, okay, it was going to be approved on second and final reading, and the date amendment should be August 2nd on line 85.
So Chair, was this is just a little bit of housekeeping, but is this
Yes, it's just
meet all
a
the
bit of
intent of your
housekeeping.
committee? So would you please just state the motion, we'll save the amendment.
All right, the Standards and Assessment Committee moves that the board approve R277404 as amended on second and final reading.
What's that? Is that draft one? Still stays draft one, as amended?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I would see this is the board approve R277404, draft one,
As
as
amended.
amended on second.
And that amendment is on line 85, and it just updates to today's date, August 2nd, 2018.
With that update of August 2nd. Just trying to move us along so we're not here forever. Okay, Vice Chair Ellis, comment?
Well, not about this, but I would like to propose an amendment to this rule since it's on the table for action today.
Okay. So do you have a,
So I would like to strike out lines 160 to 163, which is the provision that was voted on in March that has caused considerable headache of confusion so this is where we say that they can use the test to be graded. Is that the wrong line? Which one is it? I typed in reasonably, trying to find the place. Which one? That's it.
we have 160 to 163. We have an amendment. We have a proposed amendment to the motion to remove lines 160 to 163. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Board Member Bolter. Discussion to that amendment.
Can I speak to it?
You can speak to it. Yes, you may. Oh, hold on. I got to have your light back. Oh,
I'm on.
you're on. Okay.
So I feel like this was kind of sold to the board as a great choice type of movement where we want people to be able to exercise their right to opt out, so we want people to be able to exercise their right to score the test if they want. All I've seen as a result from this is confusion, both on part of the parents as well as administrators and teachers when they're going to give it. I've seen a lot of coercion to take the test this last year. A lot of people feeling like their opt-out rights were being threatened because they were now having people get up and say that, this is going to be part of your grade, and just a lot of confusion. And I disagree with some of the attorney statements that have been made that this somehow fulfills their right to the reasonable accommodate or whatever, which is talking about students with disabilities, is my understanding. Anyways, and I just feel like it's caused a lot of headache. Board Member Belknap and I had requested this rule be put back on, and I apologize again. I keep having to apologize for missing my June meetings, but I had other things to attend to. So I wasn't put in place for this discussion.
Okay. Board Member Hanson?
I have to tell you that I've gotten almost more positive reaction when we pass this from parents than almost anything else that we've passed. They really like this. They like having the choice and they like having the option. So I'm not in favor of taking it out.
Okay. Board Member Reby?
I'm curious to how we got to taking all this language out. Can we just bring this up right now and take it out? I mean, we just put it in, and if we wanted to change a rule, we'd have to see who was voting on the prevailing side. Just, this whole rule is open, we can take everything out right now. Okay.
Yeah, it came out of committee, so you can pick and choose.
Okay.
Because we have a proposed
Okay,
amendment.
I just wanted to make, I was unclear. I thought we were just talking about specific things, so now that I know that we can just change the whole
The
rule.
rule is on the
Okay.
table.
Great, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. Vice Chair Brittany Cummins?
I'm going to speak against this amendment. The same argument for adding confusion to the system could be made for the opt-out in general, and I don't think that's a reason to not move forward with something that has been beneficial to some parents and teachers who choose it. And so I think the answer to it isn't to get rid of the provision, but to find out where the problems lie and to try and solve the confusion and to bring clarity to the system. So I'm going to speak against it for that reason.
Board Member Gravitt?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing because I've heard from a lot of teachers, parents, and students that they are kind of excited about this because instead of taking 2 tests now, maybe they would be down to 1. And the problem, like to put it on your grade, they're misunderstanding. And so the solution is clarification and instead of, getting rid of it. And I think this is a chance to make something that we need to do matter to a lot of kids and to a lot of parents. So I'm going to vote no on the amendment.
Okay, the Board Member Belknap?
Thank you, Chair. Would it be okay if we had Darren come to the table so I could ask him a couple of questions, please?
Sure. Darren, will you please come up? Board Member Belknap, did you have your questions ready for him?
I'm ready.
Okay. Again, board members, we're talking about the amendment to the motion of deleting lines 160 through 163. Okay.
So it's a kind of a 2-part question. So Darren, my question would be how much information have you been getting, either pro or con, on this idea? And number 2, how much confusion is there because of lack of understanding, I guess? And number 3, a comment that was made by Jenny is that now they only have to take 1 test. Would that not be considered a punishment to someone else not having to take a test?
Those are some hard questions for me to answer, all 3 of those. In terms of the number of questions or issues that have come to my desk or to internal auditing, so there was at least 1 issue that came through the auditing with a request to consider that. And I had approximately, not prepared to answer this, but approximately 6 or 7 contacts from people in the field, either parents or anonymous email groups or LEA directors about this issue. When I talked to assessment directors at one of their meetings towards the end of the year, some of the LEAs have had no. I asked them to raise their hand if they've had complaints come, and some of them didn't raise their hand, and some raised their hand. Provost City School District was one that we've received some issues or some concerns that have come to my area. Washington County School District, I received at least 2 calls or contacts from people in that entity. I'm not sure that's more or less than what a typical year would be when we talk about statewide assessments, though. In a casual conversation with a gentleman in our auditing section, I asked that question, is this typical for a year in the spring? I was surprised they get complaints that come in through the tip line about opt-out. And that conversation was, again, casually, I don't have the numbers for you, that's about the same as we've had in previous years. Some LEAs chose not to act on that amendment to 404 and didn't provide any communication out to their schools. They didn't change any direction at all. And other LEAs took immediate action and tried to communicate with the field or their constituents, either teachers or parents or both, that there was this new, or that this opportunity existed for it to count as one or more of the, or as one of the course requirements. In terms of could a student take it either or, so if a teacher offers the final test and then they have you have the SAGE summative or moving forward the RISE summative, would that be a punishment or reward if the student took one or the other? I think that's hard to answer because there's still some other variables there that could be in play that confound that situation a little bit. So I don't know that I can answer that.
Okay, you have a follow-up?
I'm sorry, Chair, but, okay, so for clarity then, do our assessment directors, and hopefully it trickles down to the end of the rows, do they understand that this can fulfill a course requirement? It isn't a course, I mean, I can't even tell you what this means exactly. I don't know that they know exactly what this means, and I'm not saying there's mass confusion out there, but is there some way that we can work better here at this office to give more clarity to, if you could explain it to me, I'd like it.
Yeah. Yeah, so the guiding document, which you allowed to be sent out of your building last to the end of March, 1st of April, provided some of that. Part of the challenge that came from one of those LEAs was somebody had photocopied it, sent it out, and there was no additional communication that went to some of the teachers about that. And so there was some interpretation problems, just kind of to what you're alluding to. Well, some of the reasons that some districts chose not to take any action is just the timing, and they decided we need to study it out at our local level. None of them expressed, none of those have expressed concerns to me personally about feeling like it infringes on their rights as an LEA or as a classroom teacher. So that part has been generally positive in my communications with LEAs. Again, I think what you've alluded to is how people are implementing that and how they're interpreting it and making sure that it doesn't overlap with some of those prohibitions about punishing a student or rewarding a student. That's usually where the crux is coming from when we have complaints that make it to my level.
Vice Chair Ellis.
Thank you. I agree that the term course requirements is a huge problem. It's so subjective as to what that could mean. And this is not standardized testing as far as our statewide, but this is just an AP course, for instance. My son had a class that if they were to pass the AB test, then they got an A for that entire term. Could that not be considered a course requirement? And so then we have kids that are, in essence, we could have kids that because they took the state exam then could get an A in that entire course, which would be all assignments. I mean, it just seems like that would be a huge punishment to students that are opting out if a teacher chose to interpret course requirement as something so broad as what an AP teacher has done. And that could very easily happen. And that's one of my reasons why I'm just like, I feel like it needs work and we should just strike it out until we have the wording a way that actually works.
Board Member Stokes.
Move the previous question on the amendment.
Okay. I
guess it was
we're going to
on the
vote on it
motion.
in the debate. Going to do that now. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The motion before the board is, well, the amendment to the motion for the board is to strike lines 160 to 163. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Will the ayes raise their hand? Vice Chair Ellis, Board Member Wright, Board Member Bolter, and Board Member Belknap. Okay. Scott, are you on? Not hearing him come on. How did you vote? Did you vote on this, Board Member Nelson? And how did you vote? Did you vote? Okay. So do you have all those? Okay. We're going to go back to the motion. The amended motion fails, so we're going back to the motion, which is to approve R277404 draft 1 on second and final reading with that August 2nd date. Is that right? So not seeing any discussion, let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Voting was unanimous. Okay, please continue.
We did have a discussion addressing suicide prevention and mental health in schools that was very interesting and to the point, and that we hope that we can return to some of those things in our strategic plan. And then we had an action item about an out-of-time school program. It was a bill by Senator Escamilla, and we approved it, and it was on the consent calendar for the board in July and passed. So that completes our report.
Thank you, Chair Cannon. Okay, that completes all of our committee reports. Is that correct? Okay, we're kind of catching up. We're gonna